Welcome to the show, Immad. Thanks for joining.
Yeah,
There
thanks
he
for
is.
having me. It's always cool when you listen to a podcast and now you're on the other side and you get
I
to
love it.
be part
You're
of it.
live.
I'm so glad you've been listening. I hope you've enjoyed the content. Great to have you here. Can you give us a breakdown of introduce yourself, introduce Mercury, introduce what's going on today with the round?
Yeah, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Mercury. Mercury provides banking to startups, e-commerce, and professional services. We started I guess we launched in April 2019, so relatively young company, but a ton of startups use us, especially after SVB and that kind of failure. And then, we just announcing our Series C. Sequoia is leading the round with Spark and Marathon coming in as new investors, and all of our previous kind of VCs are participating. So it's a 300 million round with a combination of primary and secondary.
Very cool. We're
3.5
having
billion
Andrew
valuation.
Reed on the show later. Who at Sequoia did the deal? Who's the rainmaker?
Yeah, Sonia Huang.
Cool.
She's been doing a ton in AI, including LangChain and Glean, and she knows a lot about fintech as well. So excited to have her on board.
Talk about what it's like now raising these rounds that are in the hundreds of millions of dollar range. Is it still kind of feel very similar to the early days where you're just like, hey, let's grab coffee and hang out and you talk about the business? And
I haven't built a spreadsheet in years.
no, I'm
honestly,
curious.
it's
I
like a
imagine it's
surprisingly similar process to
Okay.
an
Yeah.
earlier round, right? I did this in about 4 weeks, and at least as a founder, you're really still like pitching the big vision, like how can this be, another 100x, right? Like
Yeah.
that seems hard to believe, like that's 350 billion, but like I want to do that. It's the bit that's different is there's a lot more support, right? Like when I was doing a seed round, it's all by yourself, whereas now I have a finance team, I have a data science team, and like
Yeah.
a ton of stuff after that first meeting is done by them. It's like, you have to have a great data room, you have to paint this picture of like where's the finances going in the next kind of year or two. But you still always have to tie it back to like how is this going to be like, even bigger, and what's the long-term vision, and paint that picture.
Yeah, just talk about this moment for you and the team. I mean, the SVB crisis was obviously net positive. It was, tumultuous, but you guys benefited in a big way from it. But then there was also an entire, maybe it felt like a 2-year period where it seemed like fintech was just over. Everything in the public markets was so bad, but at the same time, interest rates were way up. So you guys were benefiting from that. Does this feel like you guys feel, finally kind of like validated in this moment to say like, hey, we're getting, repriced well beyond where you guys were at in 21. And you're sort of like here to stay, it feels like.
So we've been profitable for 10 quarters.
Wow.
And
Congrats. Let's hear it for profitability,
thank you.
folks. We love to hear
I really
that.
want to build a long-term company. I really like the time where no one cares, right? Like I think that's a great time to, it was a great time to hire great people, right? There was
Yeah.
hiring in fintech was rare. There was amazing fintech talent out there. It was a great time because we didn't have that many competitors, right? Actually,
Of course.
I'm always worried that I think actually this is surprisingly uncompetitive space for how big the opportunity is.
Yeah.
Like banking in the US makes $2 trillion. Like this is an insanely huge market. And I don't think it's like as competitive as like freaking B2B SaaS, right? Like that's actually a smaller market.
Yeah.
So I like those quiet times, but obviously it's nice to get like a big valuation boost. Our last round was at 1.6 billion valuation. This is 3.5, and we made a ton of progress. Like we were a relatively small company. We had 140 employees back then. I think we announced we had about 40,000 customers. Now we have 200,000 customers. We're almost 860 employees. So we made a lot of progress. It's nice for, I guess, the world to see that and us to be able to talk about it publicly.
How do you think about Mercury is in many ways the bank of X, right? Like it's almost like it'd be hard to have been on X the past few years and not be aware of Mercury. Like you have a big following, all this stuff. How do you think about reaching founders that maybe aren't on X and kind of like scaling up, right? Because every single day there's entrepreneurs that walk into banks and they are building a startup and they just walk into Chase or Bank of America and they create an account. And how do you think about kind of reaching that next generation that maybe isn't sort of hyper online or already in the community?
Yeah, we've been kind of, I've always thought about Mercury as targeting digital entrepreneurs. So that's beyond startups, that's e-commerce, that's professional services, like anyone that spends all their time in front of a computer to run their business.
Yeah.
And these people, most entrepreneurs have friends that are entrepreneurs or they are in communities. So it's not just on X, right? Like it's Facebook groups, it's YouTube, it's Reddit, etc. And like Mercury is all over those things as well, right? Like we more than 50%, about 60% of our customers come through organic word of mouth distribution. And that's not just in the startup space, that's in all of these spaces. And our NPS is 82, so customers really like Mercury. No one's out there saying like, go use Chase. It's the best customer experience ever. Like you'll love it, right? Like Mercury kind of stands so far apart from kind of these incumbent banks that we are still growing from that core word of mouth. But we do invest in other things as well. Like we've built a bunch of kind of virality into the app and the product. So last year we launched invoicing and bill pay, and part of that is that those are like viral payment methods, right? If you send an invoice via Mercury, often you're sending it to another business, so obviously they can just pay it, but they can also sign up to Mercury, and the next time they have to pay an invoice, it's instantaneous and like super easy to do. So trying to think about these things as like creating this kind of payments network that like every business and now consumer as well is part of creates this kind of like added
talk about focus maybe. I think people had been asking for Mercury sort of personal banking for so long, and it was an obvious opportunity for you guys. It felt like something you could have sprinted towards and launch. How did you what was kind of the thought process there? Was there a certain scale that you wanted to be at before you launched personal, or what did that look like?
Yeah, it was definitely like the biggest feature request for us for a long time. It's definitely a matter of like execution, doing it at the right time. We did it with a relatively small team. I'm a big fan of kind of doing these new things with like initially fairly small teams and seeing if it works and then investing. So I think we had a 5-person team. One of the drivers was we found this amazing guy, Alexei, who previously had his own kind of startup neobank in the consumer space, and then he helped Albert launch their consumer bank, and then he did the same at Mercury. So yeah, having great leaders, what's the term Keith Rabois likes, having like shotgun barrels or whatever, is part of like knowing when the right time is. But yeah, we do a lot, but we also try to be really focused, right? Like banking and doing an amazing banking experience for startups is the core, and that's where we have like the biggest investment in.
Can you talk a little bit about underwriting at the earlier stage, these online businesses? How is that different? Is it riskier? How are you thinking about the risk profile of like a non-brick and mortar customer coming on the platform?
Yeah, I mean, we don't give them loans, so like underwriting isn't necessarily about like credit risk, but it's about like KYC and KYB. Like, how do you really know someone? Definitely startups are actually easier, right? Like people have a pretty big digital presence. They have better websites. They have a LinkedIn. They have X, etc. And their descriptions and their VCs. Like if a Sequoia-funded company shows up, you can underwrite that very quickly. I think it's a lot trickier when it is like a professional service consultancy and they don't have an online presence, and like you have to kind of learn more about it quickly. There we think of like a tiered approach, right? Like if we understand less, we'll ask you more questions, ask for proof of address or that kind of thing, and then we end up setting like kind of lower limits and things like that as well. Sure. So a startup will have a lower risk tier. We'll give them a lot of flexibility. A company that we know less of will, initially they won't be able to send like $1 million wire. They'll have to kind of earn their way to building up our understanding and the kind of like features we give them.
Yeah, what do you think is the future of venture debt? Over the last year, it's been in the news because of some sort of high-profile shutdowns, but obviously it's an important tool. Is that become a meaningful part of the business over time, or is it just something that you guys want to have available, but it's not a huge focus?
Yeah, venture debt is actually like a small-ish market. Like people talk about it in the VC community, but even SVB, which by far was the biggest venture debt provider, I think they had like a $7 billion portfolio when they failed. So I think there's a good way to do it and a bad way to do it. A good way to do it is like you're revenue-generating company, and maybe there's some cash flow need because your AR takes a while or you have some equipment, etc. And then you do it. That's great. I think the cases where I don't love it is, you're some AI company that's not making any money today, and you want to like go extend your kind of fundraise and runway by like 20% or something. I think in those situations, like when you run out of that, as you start getting into that 20%, or like it reduces your options, right? Like when you have a fundraise, a VC fundraise, and you're in that last 20%, sure, you do layoffs, you kind of reprioritize, you cut your founder salary, you do whatever the hell it takes to survive. But if you have like a kind of this fixed burn rate that like is caused by venture debt, that's not a healthy position to be in. So I think if you use it in the right way, it can be quite beneficial. You know, my last company, yeah, I raised $1 million venture debt and like it saved the company and actually like got us to a profitability. So it's really important for us. And I think people kind of like with like most things on the internet, at least, like people tend to say these extremes, like never do it, blah blah blah. I think it's like is the right thing at the right time.
That'll be the caption we use on this clip.
We do provide venture debt.
Yeah, when we post this clip, it'll be like breaking news: never use venture debt ever. Watch for the full reaction. I had a question about interest rates. Do you want to go first? Or?
Go for that, and then I have a different.
Yeah, I want to talk about how interest rates affect your business and how you think startups could prepare for this. I mean, high interest rates, you're making more money on interest. Low interest rates, there's more business formation, more venture capital flowing in. Does it just net out where you don't care? Do you have a preference? What's your view on interest rates right now?
I mean, obviously we can't control it, so under every circumstance we'll try to win. I think the ideal interest rate for us is like something like 3%. I think there's lots of kind of VC funding and business formation at 3%, but we also have the opportunity to make money on our deposits better at 3%. And you know, for us, and I think most startups, like I think you want to operate like whatever the macroeconomy is and like try to set yourself up in that way. So yeah, we grew a lot when interest rates were zero, especially during kind of the big bubble. And you know, there was definitely like a struggle in terms of growth during like some of that 2022 period. But you know, since then it's picked up and we've obviously grown our market share and things like that as well.
You've invested in hundreds of other startups. I imagine the first of every month is pretty chaotic in your inbox. You're just getting flooded. You're like, great, I have another 300 emails to get through. Talk about your sort of personal investing process. I imagine you have such an amazing, you have one of the craziest networks in startups because so many of the best companies in the Valley are running on Mercury. But talk about your personal process. You're busy running a multi-billion-dollar, business that's doing, hundreds of millions of actual EBITDA. At this point, are you ever making investments where it's just, a good friend or a founder you back says, hey, you should invest in this company, and you just email them, say, sure, I'm in? Or is it, what does your process actually look like?
I talk to every company I invest in. I'll probably do like 20-ish this year. I've done about 300 altogether. Main reason I do it is I just like talking to entrepreneurs and hearing like these crazy fun ideas. Like I've done a bunch in space and defense and things like that, where, it's very new to me, very different from fintech. And it's always like a great learning experience. And I really want to give back to entrepreneurs. Like I've been doing startups since 2006. And I think it's a great way to actually be helpful to people. But if I invest, I really want to believe in them. Like my rough criteria is if this person texts me at like 5 p.m., am I going to be excited to like do a call with them, or am I going to be annoyed that I have to talk to them? So like I definitely want to do that 30 minutes to like have like a bar of saying, okay, I will be excited because I love this space and I want to help this person out. So that's definitely a key. It tends to be a broad set of kind of things, and I'm still an active investor. So hit me up if you're raising.
No, it's amazing that it's actually most people have to like really justify. Oh yeah, I'm angel investing, and it's gonna benefit me in these ways, and maybe get some return. But for you, it's like hardcore customer development, feedback, talking to customers, and maybe you invest as well. So very cool. You got anything else?
Yeah. Can you talk about how AI is impacting the business? I'd love to know. There's the boring stuff, which I feel like is just LLMs are great at text processing. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that's no longer paperwork. Maybe you're scanning documents, OCRing them, throwing them through LLMs. Is that working? And then how does that compare to just having your engineers be more performant because they have Cursor, Cloud Code, and Devin Cognition in the mix? What does the AI strategy look like right now?
Yeah, I think the most exciting kind of short-term stuff for us is the back office stuff. So, my part of the thesis of starting Mercury was like, what if the marginal cost of serving the next user is zero, right? Like if you think about a normal incumbent bank, like you're walking into the bank branch, you're talking to someone, everything is like actually quite expensive for them to serve a new user. And that's why they have these on-risk fees for small businesses, right? Like it's just hard for them to make money from like a small business.
Yeah.
For us, it's like, how do we get it to be a database row? But it turns out like there is a lot of customer support, there's a lot of compliance, there's a lot of onboarding, and a lot of that is like text-based stuff. So yeah, how do we make it so if someone submits a utility bill to prove their address, we can like automatically process that, and it's not just cheaper, it's also instantaneous, right? Like instead of waiting 3 days for a human to look at it, we can give them a great answer straight away. So lots of applications and compliance risk and onboarding and support, and lots of it we have rolled out already, lots of it we are rolling out, and I'm really excited about it. I think it's like a genuine improvement for customers. Engineering productivity, I haven't seen as much of a boost as I would like to see. I think it's really good for making an app from scratch. When you have a huge code base that's all interlinked, it's just not as good. And we also built in like a weird programming language, Haskell, which has been great to get amazing engineers. But I think a lot of these kind of coding LLMs are not trained on Haskell as well. So like when we were like a late adopter, at least on the backend side. And then lastly, I think the user features, there's some interesting stuff coming. I'm not a fan of just like shove a chatbot in front of it as an interface. Like I think it's easier to like have structured data and be able to do things. But we've done some stuff around search and OCR. And I think like in the long run, right, like if we have your finances, if we have your financial workflows, we have all that data, there's lots of ways to help you automate your business, help you speed up getting insights and things like that. So yeah, I think there'll be lots of like kind of really meaningful ways to incorporate AI that customers like.
Yeah, on that last note there, are you guys thinking about LLM result optimization? You guys benefit, you said something like 60% of your growth and new customers are from word of mouth. Obviously, LLMs are just another form of word of mouth because they're just sort of like taking all of this, content and then, sort of organizing it and channeling it. How are you guys thinking about that? Or is it just happening by default?
You mean like a founder that goes to ChatGPT?
I go to ChatGPT and says, what bank should I use?
What bank should I use? And you hope it says Mercury.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a tweet or Zeet or whatever they call it now, and we've got a graph of like how number of signups is growing with LLMs, and it's like fully exponential, especially in the last 2-3 months. Still a small base, but if the growth rate continues, it'll be significant. And I'm using ChatGPT to ask about services and what should I use. And Mercury actually just naturally gets shown up, right? Because
that's
like
what I would
so
have
much
expected.
of the content is like this kind of community based. So if you ask for it, like what's a bank I should use for my startup, like Mercury is like likely to come up. One thing that I'm thinking about is like how are you even more active on these communities, right? So obviously I'm on X and I'm very active there, but a lot of our conversations that are happening on Reddit are not like with me or someone at Mercury kind of participating. So I do think you can change the sentiment and like improve your visibility by being active in communities. And I think that's like a big part of like how you influence LLMs. I think like you want to basically create like real content, right? Like it's a new type of SEO. This is like community-based kind of SEO and recommendation. And I think that's like, that like probably genuinely aligns with like building a good online community anyway.
That makes
100%.
sense. Well, thanks for stopping by.
Great having you
Congratulations
on.
on the round.
Big milestone.
Massive.
Happy
thanks
for
for
you
having
and
me.
the,
This
and the
was
whole
fun.
team.
And good luck to you. We'll talk
Take
to you
care.
soon.
Talk soon.
Bye.